All right, everyone. So we'll get started. I have a lot of introductions to make. I'm so happy to be here with some amazing leaders in the Chicago field here in Chicago, as well as with one of my lovely thrivers. So I just want to welcome everybody and thank you for being here today, for engaging in this conversation. Um, as you may already know, Salt Light Coalition uses a model that addresses trauma through a biopsychosocial and spiritual platform. And so we always try to impact all facets of the individual. And one of the tools that we use is yoga. And I feel like yoga really, impacts more than one of those facets. So today we're going to have a conversation about what yoga is, what it is that it does, and we're going to be listening not only from these four amazing leaders that I'm going to talk about more, but also from a thriver that has experienced yoga firsthand and seen all the changes that you may want to seek too in the yoga practice. We start by presenting Jessica Mitchell. She's a 500-hour whole yoga instructor and owner of Living Divina Yoga and Fitness with a mission to build community that is safe for everybody. And she hopes that people will see beyond the stigma of who they think yoga is for. Jessica uses Holy Yoga to lead the thrivers through deeply intimate, mindful movement in the presence of the Lord. She participates in their yoga teacher training as a mentor and is using her past chef experience to teach them how to cook healthy meals. So thank you, Jessica, for being here today. Fiona is another of our amazing teacher trainers. She's a Canadian-born US-German citizen who has grown up in 7 cities around the world before coming to Chicago in 2018 to pursue her bachelor's degree at Loyola. She felt, like we all do, the freezing cold of Chicago, and she walked in to her first hot yoga class to just deal with it. She became enamored by the practice, by the breath, by the movement. And in 2014, she enrolled in her first yoga teacher training, the first of many. Today, she is also a yoga trainer at Salt Light Coalition, and she aims to heal, empower, and job train survivors of human trafficking. Alexia is one of our trainers of Salt Light Coalition as well. Her first encounter with yoga was a playful one. As a 5-year-old, she would walk around the house on her knees in lotus posture, mimicking photos that she saw in her grandfather's library. 17 years later, Alexia realized that she couldn't deny the thirst she had for yoga, so she left Guatemala, her native country, to come to the US and pursue teacher training. Her greatest influence has been Kino McGregor, one of the few certified Ashtanga teachers in the country. Kino's inspiration helped Alexia discover that her heart is in the Ashtanga yoga practice. In 2012, Alexia went to Mysore, India to be trained by Sharath Jua from the Jua Institute where Ashtanga Vinyasa was first founded. In 2013, she got a 200-hour certification from Richard Freeman and Mary Taylor at the yoga workshop in Boulder, Colorado. And sit tight because at the end, we are going to be raffling a class with Alexia Bauer. So you have to wait till the end to see who wins. Gabriel Halpern holds a BA in philosophy and MA in health psychology and was trained at the Iyengar Yoga Institutes in San Francisco and India. Gabriel has practiced since 1970 and gives workshops nationally. He founded the Yoga Circle in Chicago, Illinois in 1985. For over 20 years, he has a core performance faculty member at DePaul University's theater department. In 2011, he was awarded the Elder Mentor of the Year by the Mankind Project. Under his guidance, the Yoga Circle was voted the best traditional Hatha studio by Chicago Magazine in 2016. Owing to the direct influence of BKS Iyengar and over 48 years continuous study and practice, Gabriel's teaching is all that is yoga, zeal in practice, science, art form, lifestyle, and mystical mentoring. He has been named one of the most influential yoga teachers in Yoga Journal and Nima. Everyone, it's such a pleasure to have you guys here today. Thank you for joining us. I just want to say that if at any point you have questions, you can use the question tab to ask questions that I can ask each of the leaders, okay? We're going to start by talking with Twana, our Thriver, who's here today, and we're so excited to have her. Twana, I remember that when you first came in as Soul Night Coalition, and you have never practiced yoga before. It was probably your first introduction to yoga then. And you came in as a double survivor. Not only you were a survivor of trafficking, but also a survivor of cancer. And I want to hear more about how this journey has been for you. I remember you saying that yoga for you had taught you that you could do anything. So please tell me more about this journey of you coming into yoga and discovering that you could do anything.
When I first came into Soul Night, my life was had changed because I had cancer. I had my breast removed, and I was was not able to move one of my arms. One of my arms was pinned to me. When I came into Soul Night, I didn't know what to expect, but all I know is I didn't want to give up. As I started to come into yoga, into Soul Night, they taught me how to heal mentally, physically, and emotionally. That was the first thing they taught me. And then when I started to do yoga, I started to learn how to relax my body and learn that relaxing and breathing was an essential. And I didn't know how breathing could help me in my life, and it did. More to say that I started to do yoga with my arm pinned to me, and once I started doing more yoga, my arms started to extend. Now I can extend instead of being pinned. And I'm grateful to having yoga in my life, learning how to live better, eat better, just do better.
Thank you, Twana. I really appreciate your insight in this. And I just want to start with the basics, really. I know that as Soul Night Coalition will welcome a variety of different yoga practices. And each of you represents a different facet of this puzzle in a way, right? So we have Jessica, who's a holy yogi. Fiona represents a mainstream practice of vinyasa. Alexis an Ashtangi. Gabriel is a leader in the world of yoga therapeutics. So can you tell me, from your perspective, each of you, what is yoga for your discipline of, not really discipline, but for your yoga style? Let's start with Jessica. Jessica, can you tell me, for a holy yoga, like, what is yoga?
Well, it first started very asana based for me. It was very movement. I was introduced to yoga at my gym, and it was very much Jin yoga. But as my life progressed in various events, it became something else. So holy yoga for me is very much a spiritual practice. It's become, I still love vinyasa. I love moving my body in a very powerful way, but I love stillness. I really seek in stillness. So it's just become a very spiritual practice that deepens my connection with the Lord.
Thank you, Jessica. What about you, Alexia? For Ashtanga, what does yoga mean?
For me personally, my yoga practice is how I start my day. I start with my practice. I feel better physically, mentally, get a little more clarity of mind. And I know that when I do my practice, my day will be better in all aspects. And it gives me a little more organization and structure, which I need for all the chaos that is around me all the time.
Thank you, Alexia. What about you, Gabriel? From the world of yoga therapeutics that you act from, what would you say yoga is?
Well, there's one thing that all approaches to yoga have in common. These are universal principles, which are suggestions and guidelines from the masters of how to comport yourself in your daily life. So the therapeutic application is just an example of how yoga can practically be used for people who have injuries or who are recovering from operations or traumatic situations. But in general, yoga works with attitude, action, and aftermath. It asks you to take on certain attitudes, such as ethical responsibility for putting out the best one that you have for yourself, and a series of disciplined actions of postures and breathing and deep relaxation, and then progressive stages of meditation. And those are things that you do, practices, and the consequences of those practices lead you to the different things that you'll hear the people say. It might bring closer to your own walk with the divine. It might help order your life. It might help you build community. But in general, it's a way of looking at something that you know is either missing in your life that you want, and you have a sense your life has brought you to yoga, or maybe you know people who've done yoga who recommend it, or you might have read a book about it. And so for me, yoga is a lifestyle of trying to be the best human being you can be. And you can draw some aspects from Eastern philosophy, but I think that each of the people here represent contemporary ways of interpreting an ancient teaching and making it relevant for our time and place here in the United States.
Thank you, Gabriel. That was very insightful. Fiona, what about you? What would you say yoga is for you from your perspective?
So as you mentioned, like I had a very mobile upbringing. And so for me, it was a matter of finding roots and finding those roots within, I thought it was in persons, places, or cities, but I didn't actually understand that rootedness came from within. And so through my practice of yoga, I was able to create a sense of routine and rootedness within myself. So I began to heal parts of myself that I didn't realize had been traumatized from very young ages, that I just finally became okay with, and understood that like sense of home came from within and not anywhere else. So for me, yoga, specifically vinyasa, breath to movement, links this ability to be able to breathe and be in the moment without projecting into the future or holding on to the past. So it completely shuts off my mind to be able to focus on the exact moment in order to just invite calmness, invite tranquility, invite that stillness and peace from within. So that's what yoga means to me.
I love that, Fiona. Thank you for sharing. Tuana, from the perspective of a new yogi, a beginner yogi, can you tell us a little bit what yoga represents for you? What does that mean to you?
For me, yoga to me means peace. To have a peace of mind, to share myself with my spiritual father, and to learn how to meditate when things go wrong. A lot of times, I have to get in one space and just meditate, and without extending myself too much. And that's what yoga does for me. It gives me a sense of peace, kind, and freedom.
Thank you, Tuana. Jackie from Orlando wants you to know that she loves your testimony and that she also had surgery and she's frustrated by not being able to do yoga right now. So she sends you love. So just passing on the message. Thank you guys for sharing. I want to hear a little bit more from Fiona on, Fiona, what do you think are some benefits of yoga? As a teacher, what are some of the benefits you've seen among your students?
So from a very broad perspective or scientific perspective, it enhances neurofunctionality, it exercises the brains and the internal organ function, and just overall blood flow and concentration. But what's happening in your body is that your cells are actually activated so physically that you can approach life a little bit more positively. It's like, just think of them like happy shots throughout your body. But overall, it also gives you a sense of healing. You can process your emotions, and trauma can get stuck in the body physically, right? So when you move through yoga movements, you're able to maybe access those parts of your emotions that maybe have been repressed or just not even been aware of because it was locked away in some shape or form. And again, it's what I've experienced is that students have come up to me after practice and just they said that they now feel more encouraged to unlayer parts of themselves because of the practice. And maybe it's because of a teacher, but usually it's coming from within and the actual journey of moving into the practice and having that discipline and that dedication.
Thank you, Fiona, for sharing that with us. Tuana, from the perspective of protection or seeking healing, can you tell us some of the benefits that you have experienced yourself?
A lot of benefits that I've experienced is mobility. I'm able to do things on my own when I had to depend on people. It was hard to have people help me move around or get dressed or things like that. But since I've been doing yoga, I'm able to stretch the limbs and open up the joints, and therefore I can put my own clothes on and put a jacket on without pain. Yoga has done a lot for me, just changed my life. I am so grateful to having yoga in my life because I get, when I get into that place where everything bothers me, I go into a place where I just get calm and I meditate and I just start talking to, my spiritual father, and I get better.
Thanks for sharing, Tuana. Gabriel, I think it's interesting what Tuana mentioned because she mentioned, the mobility, so physical benefits. She mentioned some mental benefits. So I want to understand a little bit more what really happens to our bodies when we start practicing yoga. What happens physically? What happens emotionally? And what happens psychologically? Can you speak to these three levels?
Well, physically, you're stretching your muscles. So a great increase of blood flow and circulation throughout your body, and that's going to give you an up feeling or a positive feeling. Like Tuana mentioned, the joints get more mobility, so you're less stiff in your daily movements, and also skill in action is one of the ideas behind yoga practice. So even in your daily life, there's just a different kind of elegance as you go about doing your daily actions. Psychologically, you're focusing your attention, as Fiona mentioned. It really brings you into the here and now so that your life in the present becomes much more vivid, and the mind is less prone to either going into the past or the future. So that's where your real life is anyway. So psychologically, it really gives you a grounding or a centering. I like the way Fiona said, you're really rooted now in the reality of the moment. And then emotionally, again, they say the issues are in the tissues. So as you start opening up the tightness in your body, things that may have been repressed or not clearly seen, they come up for review, but now they're being seen in a much more clear field of calm and quiet. And so that's going to give you different access to other emotions that you maybe have been afraid to let out or share before, or maybe other emotions that haven't served you well. You'll learn to let them go or pay less attention to them. So there's really a combination of the physical, the mental, and the emotional. And as Jessica has mentioned also, the practice inevitably leads you to a deeper understanding of the connectedness to all of life. And that's one of the hooks for the general search that people go on when they get to yoga. You want to find a deeper truth and realize that if you're not connected to the spiritual source of your own existence, there's going to be more unnecessary suffering and pain. Whereas when you're connected to that, it gives you the resources to be able to live your life with the potential of being a spiritual person, which we all are, but now you're doing it consciously. And so yoga adds all those components together.
Thank you, Gabriel. One of our attendees is asking a very interesting question. Kayla wants to know, what has yoga meant for you in the quarantine? So I don't know if Tuana wants to take this one or maybe somebody else. Would you like to take this one? Tuana, has it helped you at all during the quarantine, your practice?
As I'm in this quarantine, I do a lot of praying. I do more just sitting still sometimes and just, letting not my mind wander off, but stay in one place.
I feel like it's helped me personally during the quarantine in that it creates structure in my life. So every day in the morning, I can do some yoga, not my entire practice, but definitely some yoga, and it kind of helps me ground my days. I don't know if any of you have experienced that at all this quarantine.
Classically speaking, yoga is really meant for one person. I think that yoga in the United States, where there's large classes and we have to market this to make it a money-making proposition, or at least enough money to keep the studio open that you can share the gift of yoga with people. But traditionally, it's about one person and a practice. So having much more time now in quarantine should give the people who are already committed to yoga more time to practice. And the people who have been lazy before or using excuses because they were distracted by how externally their life was before, now they don't have any excuse. They can use this downtime to practice more. So personally for me and the people who I've been trying to support, it's don't whine about wanting to get back to where things were before, because a little political critique, things weren't great before either. There was still ecological devastation and a lot of refugees around and terrorism and corrupt politics. And so if that's the normal, I don't want to get back to that. So first things first, you heal yourself and then you bring the healing that you have to the world. So I think this is actually a good thing if people are willing to accept that the downtime gives them opportunity to practice more.
Thank you, Gabriel. What about you, Jessica?
Yeah, I love that, Gabriel. That is such a you frame things so well, and I love the way that you think and you speak. I've realized how quarantine has forced many people to pivot, and when I think of that word pivot, it's like this stop and a harsh turn. And it has forced us into a time of stillness for many of us, and that is very awkward. People who are super driven and producing and doing, to be sitting in with themselves is very interesting and sometimes painful for them as well. But we're peeling back layers in our awareness. And for me, it's been very purpose driven. And I get to lead people in their practice, still doing some online things. So as I close the doors for my studio space, I pivoted straight into the online space. And I always instruct my students or just offer to them that this is your practice, not mine. So I love what you said, that this is an individual thing, Gabriel. Like this is a one participant thing, but sometimes people need that nudging or just that accountability, and they deeply desired that interconnectedness of community. So I have had the opportunity to lead in that way. Had I not had that, I don't think that I'd be as disciplined in my own yoga practice. And not that I'm trying to take from my students, but like I said, it's really produced a purpose in me to be able to stay in my own practice and my own meditation so that I can then have more to give to my students. But it's just been like this kind of social experiment to witness. And I really, really love watching it kind of unfold.
Yeah, I definitely feel like quarantine has tuned us inwards for sure. I see that with myself, with my kids, with the women at Soul Light Coalition. So it's been an interesting experiment, one that I'm really enjoying in a way. But to continue, another thing about tuning in, my next question is to Alexia. I have noticed that every time I go into my Ashtanga practice, I have the best ideas of the day. That's when all of them flood in. And sometimes you'll seen this before, I'll have to take notes or stop the class and go away just to like start making calls, you know. So what is happening there? Why does that happen, Alexia?
Well, the Ashtanga yoga system is a set sequence of postures that we do the same all the time. Of course, it's not the same every day because our bodies are changing every day. Our state of mind is different every day, and to be different for everybody accordingly, you know, according to the needs of their bodies. But the sequence that we use as a base is the same, and we learn it. We learn the same sequence, and when we practice something and we learn it and build the muscle memory, our unconscious mind takes over when we redo it over and over. And so what happens is that the space in your brain that has the ability to create and to solve problems and to think more clearly has a little more space, because it's not focusing on what's going to be the next thing that you're doing, but you are moving, you are having more blood flow going through you into your brain, more oxygen. And so it gives you a little more room for those ideas to pop up. I have that same experience too sometimes, where like the brightest thoughts pop in as I'm practicing. And like I was telling you, every once in a while, I have to just dictate them to Siri so I don't forget them later.
So I need somebody to invent a mat that I can take notes on or something like that, like a note-taking mat. I think it'd be a great tool to have during yoga practice for sure. So let's speak a little bit more about that, about the brain. Yoga is more than just a physical practice. It is a practice with 8 limbs, one being dhyana or meditation. And Jackie from Orlando wants to know, what is the best introduction to this practice of meditation? Gabriel, do you want to talk a little bit about the best introduction to the practice of meditation?
Sit still and shut up.
Please elaborate.
Can't get much simpler than that. Well, again, our culture has doing, accomplishing, always churning out results, and so many people have feelings that of being less than, and their worth has to be defined by more and more prestige or status symbols to indicate to other people that I'm okay, see what I have. But it shows a kind of poverty mentality that's deeper within. And yoga is saying that everybody has a certain light within them. And if you could just sit down long enough and quiet enough, like shaking things up in a salad cruet, put it down and all the heavy elements kind of settle to the bottom, and then the clarity comes to the top. And if I can make this connection between science and yoga a long time ago posited 4 states of consciousness, 3 of which we understand, and the 4th one we're still working on. And we call this the brain waves. The alpha wave, the beta wave of waking consciousness, the alpha wave of kind of the dream state, the liminal state, and then there's the deep dreamless state where nothing seems to be happening. If you wake somebody up, they don't remember anything, but that's a different brain wave. And then there's a 4th brain wave, and we've come to recognize that this brain wave and the deep dreamless brain wave, called the delta and the theta state, this is where the creativity and the ideas, the spontaneous ideas, erupt from that part of your mind when it's no longer preoccupied with the daily grind and churning out results and identifying yourself with a lot of creature comforts that people think are necessities in their life, but they're really luxuries that just create unnecessary spinning your wheels and don't take you closer to the depth that you have inside yourself. So I think the simplest and easiest way to teach anybody meditation is, first, the asana practice, according to yoga, strengthens your spine and makes your legs limber, that you can sit long enough to be able to go deeper than just the heebie-jeebies and itchiness that people feel when they're sitting still for more than 5 minutes, which shows you how shallow our culture is in preparing you for anything of depth. I mean, you can't even listen to a podcast for 45 minutes without being bored out of your mind. Let's be honest, you're not going to get that deep if you can't sit for more than 5 or 10 minutes, even if you do that a couple of times a day. And then there's some kind of technique to help you focus your attention, since even if you're sitting still on the outside, your mind can be racing around all over the place. So they give you some kind of concentration technique, something as simple as following your breath or counting numbers, or in the case of yoga, it might be a mantra or a prayer, an affirmation you read again and again yourself. And that helps to not let your mind be distracted by anything other than the thing that you're concentrating on. And that's the beginning, is to learn to get your mind going one-pointed, single flow of attention, undistracted. And from there, different things will happen according to the intensity of the practitioner, how long they devote themselves to this, and also as we used to talk about in the drug experiences, set and setting. If you do it in a quiet environment, out by the forest or the lake, or, where there's less noise and no punk rock band playing or jackhammer from a construction site, your nervous system is going to react very, very differently in that kind of setting. And then the set is, did you do any study about this? Are you going into this cold turkey? Did you research at all about this? Do you have any ideas of what to expect or what to look for? And then you're a little bit more prepared. And then, of course, usually it's suggested you have a teacher, somebody to give you feedback, both to encourage you when you're flagging in your effort, and also to give you a critique if you're doing something that's moving you in a direction that's not as effective or it's not going to serve you. So I think all those things play a part in the beginning of meditation.
Thank you. That was great. Fiona, can you tell us a little bit about what happens physiologically speaking in the brain when we meditate?
So you increase gray matter in the brain area. So you have the insula, the hippocampus, and as well as the prefrontal cortex. And this reduces the cortical thinning due to aging, right? So the prefrontal region strengthens through meditation because of all the things that Gabriel just mentioned, from just sitting still. Like, you're training your mind to actually focus on your drishti, on one point of focus, that then also activate different parts of your brain that allow for increased attention span, also exploration of compassion or empathy, right? So these parts of your brain begin to expand. And again, there's like a science behind it. And I also have a book called Buddha's Brain, if you're like really interested in learning more about the neurological breakdown of like what does it mean to meditate? Why is it so important to keep the brain active? And again, yoga is a meditation, or both parts in which that help with expanding and treating your brain so that it stays healthy, and it vitalizes all the rest of your organs, and also increasing your parasympathetic nervous system to like include the rest and digest, and not just, again, you're always in the sympathetic nervous system, which is always flight and fright, which is what we have seen in society, is what we're trained to, again, in our very, very capital structure here. So again, coming back to the brain, it's just more so focusing on the parts, or activating the parts of your brain that you're exercising it like a muscle, and you're expanding parts of yourself that you might be out of touch of, whether it's emotionally or even physically. So
thank you, Fiona. That was great. Just transitioning now, I think we have a question later on that an attendee is asking actually about the trajectories of each of you into yoga. But talking about that, I want to talk to Jessica, because Jessica, I know your trajectory into yoga has to do with trauma and healing from it. Can you tell us how yoga can help us heal from trauma?
Well, I love something that Gabriel touched on. He said the issues are in the tissues, and it's so true. We have muscle memory, and everything that we've ever experienced in our lives, we hold on to in our muscles, but we don't always have awareness of it. And so then our muscles then manifest in a certain way, usually pain. Stress is something that happens in our bodies. We all feel it. We feel it in our neck or our shoulders or our hips. As far as trauma goes, especially a deep trauma that you may experience as a child, like I did, can really be held in there, and it's confusing. And so what yoga has done for me has brought me out into an awareness. I've actually done some very deep work in my healing in relation to why I carry certain pains in the body. And I never knew that there was a why. And so this revelation that takes place. And so when revelation takes place here, and you're connecting it, then revolution takes place in the body. You start graduating into a leadership of your own life when you really start peeling back the layers of that healing. Not only has the healing space of yoga produced a healing for me through that trauma, it has also brought me to an awareness of how God meets me on my mat. And so the yoking, the union that takes place, the bridging the gap in my own spiritual and my walk in my faith with the movement of yoga has been the catalyst for my healing. That's what produced me with the mission and vision to try to help others and hold a sacred space for them in their own healing as well. And so I try to use language that is safe, because it is very scary for people to face themselves on their mat, or even acknowledge the fact that something has been wronged in them or towards them in their own lives is a very scary thing. So it is a very interesting way to slowly peel back some layers. I don't believe healing is a one and done. I think it's an active daily choice. And so you have to say yes to you. You have to say yes to being in the intimacy of God's presence. You have to say yes to accepting that healing for yourself, because oftentimes in trauma, we get seized in victimhood mentality, right? And so, because it's all we know. So you don't know what you don't know. And I love how yoga really helps us know something so deep within ourselves and our innermost being, as God speaks of our being. So yeah, it's been amazing. And I love being able to then take what I've learned through my own process and see how it unravels or really reveals revelation in other people's bodies so that they can walk in their revolution.
Well, thank you for sharing on your journey. Twana, I love some of the things that Jessica talked about, how she healed herself in her mat. What can you tell me about you? How did you find healing in your mat?
Well, at the beginning, it was hard to concentrate. It was hard to focus on one thing. And then I started to remember I wanted to get rid of the fear, the pain, and the hurt. And so as they would teach the yoga, they teach you how to just relax and let everything go. And for me, for the trauma, everything started to come loose, like a rope started to unravel. Everything started to unravel in my life. And I was able to get on the mat and able to focus on just one word, or maybe focus on one spot, and the healing started. And in that moment, I started to heal, and the more I practiced yoga, the more I wanted to get better. So for me, that's how it helped me. And it wasn't easy, because to focus was a hard thing, because my mind was always running more than 2 and 3 places. But when I got there and I continued to, focus on, if it's just a spot on the floor, or if it's, one word, or, something happy, I'll focus on it. And then my mind and my body starts to work in that way. So, yeah.
I love that, Twana. I love that yoga gave you a platform for presence, for focus. It was just that one word. That's all you needed to do. Focus on that one word, that one breath, that one point on the floor. And through that focus, how you were able to just get over. It's really, really beautiful story. So thank you for sharing that. I think one of those practices too that gives you a platform for focus is pranayama. So I want to know from Alexia, what is pranayama? Can you tell me what pranayama is for those of us here who don't know what pranayama is?
So pranayama is sitting and breathing, or moving the breath, or changing the way of breathing in different ways. And we can do pranayama sitting, or we can do it as we move, or we can do it in many different ways. There are many different techniques, but pranayamas are breathing techniques that we can apply, again, to bring either a focus point to be prepared for meditation, or it can be for cleansing, or it can be for, again, calming the mind, bringing it to a state of focus. Mm-hmm. And what we do with pranayama, what happens is that we are accessing and toning the vagus nerve, which will affect our nervous system, and specifically the parasympathetic nervous system that will help all the systems, or the majority of systems in our bodies, to be in balance.
Wow. So I love how much is going on there physiologically. There's almost, I've experienced before panic attacks. And what I've noticed is with the practice of pranayama now, when I can tell when a panic attack is coming, and I'm basically able to stop it, like at some point, like in the beginning. Would Fiona want to like share with us a little bit more about maybe how does that happen? Why am I able to stop my panic attack?
And again, it's coming back to the idea of the mind. And Isabel, for you, in instance, someone who's like suffering from maybe regular panic attacks, then it's just like you're training your brain to actually link your thoughts to your breath and like focus on where you're feeling it in your chest or your abdomen, and like drawing that intention to remind yourself that you can breathe, you have lungs, right? So it's like something as basic as like reconnecting to the thoughts of your basic organ function, or just like the rise and fall of your chest, that can maybe slow down some of that anxiety prone experience.
Mm-hmm.
And again, so pranayama meaning also like that life force of energy expanding and contracting within your body. You can also think of it in terms of prana in and prana out. Prana in being what nourishes your energy, what brings you joy, what can I take in with my breath, what can I continue to fill my body with, and prana out, what depletes or drains you of your energy, what can you let go of in that instance, and truly just allow it to be as you breathe in and out, right? So having again maybe an intention or a focus as you breathe in and breathe out, so that pranayama becomes like it comes to life, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I also love too that pranayama. If you are like me, I have a monkey mind. I think Tawana was talking about kind of calming her mind, and my mind is like, woo, like, hi guys, maracas and all. I think pranayama is a great way to be introduced almost to meditation, because it makes you focus on the breath. So it gives you something to focus on. And then it kind of trains you in a way to get to meditation. At least that was my experience. That's how I was able to get to meditation, was by basically focusing on pranayama first. Yeah, I love that. So Jessica, I want to pivot a little bit. I know that you teach something called Holy Yoga, and that's some form of Christian yoga or something. And I'm so confused right now, because what is that? Can Christians do yoga? I mean, please tell me more.
Yeah, for sure. So I teach Holy Yoga. It's not something I invented. It's been around for, I think, about 13 years now, but I was certified almost 4 years ago. It is a faith-based, Christ-centered form of yoga. When I was looking for my teacher training, I felt really called by God to be certified and offer that sacred space that I was talking about. I just wanted to make sure that what I was learning was whole. And I deeply connect with God on my mat. I was doing Holy Yoga and I didn't even know that that was a thing. I just felt like this intersection was taking place where in my healing, he was just meeting me there. And so in Holy Yoga, there's various things that we do to really experience wholeness in our brokenness. One being that this is considered experiential worship. We're using our whole minds, our whole bodies, our whole hearts, our whole strength to just worship God and be in the intimacy of his presence. So we use a form of breath prayer and meditation. And I always teach my students that prayer is talking to God. Meditation is pausing and listening. So we invite a sacred pause. We breathe in the breath of God. We take scripture and we meditate on his word. We receive it as we meditate it. We break it up into pieces like eating something. It's eating that good food that God talks about and digesting it. And it breaks up and it absorbs into our innermost being so that we see God's word in our hearts. And it strengthens us from deep within. It's really deepening. Like imagine a flower or a tree and the roots are growing. And every time you meditate on God's word, those roots really deepen and grow. So I've grown the roots of my faith through this. I never really knew God's word in such a way until I took it to my mat and it became alive to me. I really understand it now. It's like I really can unpack what the Bible means, what these holy scriptures, a sacred word means. And I teach that. And so it is something that people, sometimes it rubs up against their spirit. Like, you ask, can Christians do yoga? Yes, they can. Some people are very convicted by, how can you sever Hindu roots to yoga when in fact yoga it predates religion, right? It was something that was created 5,000 years ago. And I know that God's word says all things that are good are of God, and the sacred form of moving our bodies is of the Lord, and he redeems all things for his glory. So if we look at the pagan roots to Christmas and Easter, okay, they started out pagan. These were not things that we invented as Christians. They started out as pagan rituals, and we have redeemed them for God, or God has redeemed them for his glory by pointing to Christ through those holidays, through Easter and through Christmas. And if you're really legalistic as a Christian and you're like thinking that you cannot sever so-called Hindu roots from yoga, then, I encourage you not to watch TV, because then that's just demonic, So you really have to just discern through if yoga is for you. And if you really feel convicted and that it's going to compromise something in your faith walk, then just don't do it, or don't engage in that conversation. Because if you're being attacked or approached by somebody that is like trying to make you not do yoga because it isn't faith-based, Christ-centered. So yeah, that's it in a nutshell. I hope that clarified your question and helped you understand what holy yoga is.
Thanks for sharing, Jessica. I appreciate that. If you are watching and you have any questions, I'll be asking them soon. I'll be opening up the floor for all the Q&A. So we have 2 questions already. Please add more. And I'm going to close up with this one question. And I want to know from each of you teachers, how, I'm sure you have many stories of how yoga has changed people's lives. And so I want to hear from each of you one testimony, one story where you witnessed, yoga just improve or transform someone's life. And I'm going to start with Gabriel. Gabriel, can you tell us how you've seen yoga change people's lives?
What comes to mind is having a student that didn't have a leg and teaching him how to work both with a prosthetic device and also how to negotiate poses when you only have a stump. And had I not seen my own master work with people who didn't have any limbs, I wouldn't have had not only the knowledge, but the courage to go and help somebody and turn this person into an avid yoga practitioner once you realize that within your limitation, you're unlimited. So working with someone with no limbs, even a paraplegic, it doesn't matter. Even if you don't have arms and legs, yoga is a state of mind. So if you want me to teach you yoga, I'll work with it. Are you game or not? So I would say working with people with no limbs and seeing them progress has been one of the great privileges to be able to share with another person.
Thank you, Gabriel. What about you, Jessica? How have you seen yoga impact people's lives in your own studio or practice as a teacher?
Yeah, I have seen so much healing. There's a transformation that takes place when you give people permission to just be who they are. And I always tell people when they walk into the studio, we're going to say no to the spirit of competition. We're going to speak against the spirit of comparison. We are going to come in with our brokenness and just accept ourselves where we're at right now and give ourselves permission to let go of the things that we've been holding on to. And I work with a lot of women, so it's interesting to see their confidence build through this healing modality. And we did have a gentleman who came in because his wife was coming in and she was just falling in love with what we were doing at the studio. And he was a career fireman who had been electrocuted on the job 8 years ago. And so I teach yoga trapeze, and we drop down the straps for the contraption that I have at the studio. And he really built up a lot of strength. He had a lot more upper body. He had 2 canes. He would wobble. And even trying to do a warrior stance or mountain pose, like his knees were deeply bent. And he would wear knee pads because he always fell. And this would help cushion the fall. And so he would be like, I'm okay, but he grew so much stronger and built confidence in his own mobility. He just wanted to really expand on his mobility that he started producing like his own fan club. Like people would be like, where's Mark? If he wasn't there, it was like, is he okay? I'm like, yes, he's okay. You know, and he just flourished. It was amazing to see the healing and then but he had the desire and the will. That's the other thing. People who want to be there will be there, and you can't make them want to be there, and you can't do the work for them. It's a very much an individual journey. So you've just got to own your awesome and show up and say yes to yourself.
Yeah. Last time Gabriel was at Salt Light Coalition, he definitely sent that message to the Thrivers. I loved it. It was great. We had one Thriver who was having a hard time moving her arms, and she was complaining, and Gabriel was like, you put on your shirt, don't you? I'm like, that is so true. I love it because I think there's like a balance between empowering people and babying them. And I love that we as teachers can empower. So Alexa, can you tell us a little bit more about how you've seen people empowered or transformed by the practice of yoga?
Yes, I've seen a lot, just like everyone here, physically, mentally, emotionally. But one of the things that I see the most is that through moving the body in different ways, people start believing in or crossing the limitations of their beliefs on what they can do and they can't. So, for example, I have this student that had
a stroke.
A stroke. Thank you so much. She had a stroke, and so the one side of her body was paralyzed, and she couldn't move it. With new movement, and what happens is that when we learn new movements, and in this case, she was relearning movements, and we are creating new pathways to gain information and bring it into our brain, and that helps us see things differently. So when she started learning new movements, we were working on how to go down to the floor to be sitting and then getting up on her own, something that she couldn't do before. And just to see how she learned to do that and then translate it into her daily life as that was the only way that she could play with her toddler. So seeing that, learning new information with the body and translating it into believing new things and applying that to the rest of our lives, that's a good one that I see all the time.
Thank you for sharing. What about you, Fiona? How have you seen yoga impact your students?
I wanted to mention this earlier, but yoga is a universal language, and it doesn't discriminate against religion, race, culture, gender, and it's all encompassing, and it brings people to a sense of faith. And sometimes it's not like a very clear sense of faith. But again, also kind of to piggy off what Alexia said, it's just creating that belief almost that they can do something, or just to echo what everyone else said. I'm also a prenatal postpartum teacher. So for me, I had a student walk in and she was 42 weeks pregnant. And that day she just came to class. She was upset. She just wanted to give birth. She wanted the baby out. And she's like, just induce my labor. And I was like, okay, let's see how this goes. Cause you know, I mean, I've never been pregnant myself, but I've taken trainings to help me like prepare me for these kind of situations. And within the next day, 24 hours, she gave birth to a beautiful baby boy. And that to me was just like wow, to witness that kind of encouragement that I was able to support and support the student of mine, because she was suffering and she was attached to the idea and like literally contracted at all parts of her body because she couldn't let go of the fact that she couldn't give birth. But in reality, she just needed to relax and move and just be out of her body and like have fun with her, like being pregnant and getting ready for the baby and like building that excitement. So that was a really cool moment for me, is recognizing like the power we all have to like just flip our brains to move into a better path. And I kind of like working with all the women at Salt and Light, like my mentee especially, you know, like she's grown so much since creating her own practice and coming through the Salt and Light program to heal herself in many ways, like Tawana.
Yeah, Tawana, you have experienced, like Fiona said, so much transformation through yoga. Can you please, before we open to the Q&A, tell us how has yoga transformed you in the past year?
yoga has given me a sense of believing or belonging. I don't know, for me, I've been able to maintain my life since I've been doing yoga. I've been able to function better. I don't need nobody, to open cans or open bottles for me. My body, I can turn it more than I used to. Yoga has given me a sense of I can do whatever I put my mind to, because I started with my arm bent to me. And from there, I was doing Pilates, yoga, and I just I wanted more. I didn't want less. I wanted more. But in all, it started making me be aware of my body and knowing what body motions are moving. Yoga has done a lot for me. It just keeps me grounded when I get ungrounded. I don't know how to say it any more or less, but yeah, it keeps me grounded.
Thank you, Tawana. Now opening up to the Q&A. We have a few minutes left. Please stay to the end. There's a raffle at the end for a class, a yoga class with Alexia. The first question we have is from Paola Lopez. And she says that she would like to know people's different trajectories with learning about different types of yogas. What do you recommend for someone that has no idea what different types of yogas are, which one to go after and practice? So can you tell us a little bit about your trajectory and maybe how to find what is your yoga practice? Gabriel, would you like to start?
Well, from my own personal history, my first yoga class was actually in a theater department. So they were just doing all these sensitivity training exercises, and I didn't realize it was yoga till a couple of years later when I actually saw a yoga class on a college campus. And it was a Kundalini yoga class, which was very, very challenging in terms of the breathing exercises and holding poses for a very long time. But at that time in my life, I was trying to get out of using too many psychedelics. So that was a powerful practice that helped me morph into just learning about the discipline. And then after a number of other years, I met my first Iyengar teacher, and the alignment orientation of that approach really appealed to me because I had hurt my back when I was younger. So I didn't even realize I was looking for therapeutic application of yoga because I was just more attracted to the spiritual search that I believed yoga was taking me towards. Because people in my generation, in the late 60s, there was the huge influx of teachings from the East that hadn't made their impact into the United States as dominantly as it did at that point. So we were first learning all about Eastern philosophy and yoga and Zen and Taoism and so forth. So I was pretty studious. So I was studying a lot of these things. That's one way. But how would I tell another person? Well, they say in yoga, when the chela is ready, the guru appears. You have to really want to. I think Jessica talked about will and desire. You have to want to be looking up. And if you are looking up, there's a synchronicity that happens. I'm pretty sure almost every single person who does yoga has a story about how somehow they were in the right place at the right time and heard the right word or met the right person. And that person became the contact for them to read a book or take a class. And so to a great extent, it's keeping your eyes open. I think Tawana used the word awareness. It's just developing a keen sense of what's going to help me be more aware than I currently am right now. And you'll be led to something that's going to do that. It could be diet, it could be art, it could be yoga. And if it's yoga, you will have an unerring sense of discrimination. First, based on, do you have rapport with the teacher? Is there something about the way this person shares the discipline that really turns you on or not? They could be more asana oriented. They could be more philosophy oriented. They could be more devotionally oriented. They could be more study oriented, whatever. But you kind of find your way. And if it's not your cup of tea, never say never. You might leave that and find something else. But here's my example to use, and you have to apply this to yoga. When a little chick is in the egg, it's eating up all the nourishment that's on the inside of the egg. And then at a certain point, it's exhausted all the nourishment that's in the egg. There's nothing left for it to feed on, but it continues to do the only thing it knows how to do, which is peck at the shell. And all of a sudden, it pecks through the shell and it breaks through to the next level. And the next level is perfectly designed for it to get what it needs now that it's no longer in the egg. So in the same way, people may not realize it because they may not say it this way, but when you've gotten all the nourishment and food that you can from your current life, and then it still doesn't serve you, somehow that desire to want more and better, that will precipitate the arrival of the right teaching for you, and you take it for as long as you can. And not all teachings last for a life. Sometimes it's a weekend teaching or just for a season, but sometimes you find your lineage and you stay with that for the rest of your life, as a number of these practitioners have already mentioned in how their life unfolded. So I found my lineage and I've been with it ever since. But I also want to stress that I think yoga is non-denominational. And even if you don't have a specific way that you craft your spirituality, as Fiona was saying, it's so open to every human being. There's no excuse you can use by saying, well, I can't do it because I'm too old, or I can't do it. That's not true. These are universal. It's like saying, does gravity not affect you? Who's going to argue with things that, everybody is influenced by that? So in the same way, yoga gives you tools to open yourself up to this. And then if you do it sincerely and diligently, you will attract to you the right teaching at the right time.
Thank you, Gabriel. Alexa, do you want to speak a little about how was your trajectory and how you come to maybe Ashtanga yoga?
Yeah, and I think just as Gabriel was mentioning, a lot of it first is how you feel. Is there a teacher that you like? You go to there. I started being attracted to certain teachers, and then little by little transitioned into another one. And for me, it was Ashtanga. Just going to my first Ashtanga class without knowing that it was an Ashtanga class, but how it felt and how it made sense in my body and my mind, I just felt like that was it for me. And it stayed for now. Who knows if it will change, like Gabriel was saying, maybe at some point I will stop getting what I'm getting from it. But I think it's just trying. You have to try different things, try different teachers, go to whatever resonates with you, and you'll find your way.
Thank you. What about you, Jessica?
Well, I initially started yoga in a gym, and very westernized, right? That is a concept where it's just like, come in, it's become very corporate as well. And so when I came into it, it was a love-hate relationship. I'm not going to lie. I was like, I'm confused. Do I like this? Do I not? Like, it's kind of hard. But then the revelation of like what takes place, what blossoms, what births out of that experience, like, wow, the release in my stress and just like how my body felt better. It was very, so it was just so life-giving in that. And it has evolved for me. So my lineage did change, right? I went from this very asana movement-based practice, and it took many years. It was very much a roller coaster. I wasn't very committed to it until about 7 years ago. And it took me going through a really huge life change, a life event that took place where I was pregnant and I lost my baby halfway through the pregnancy. I had big life questions take place, and that's when I took it to my mat. And again, and mind you, I'm still in a gym doing yoga, asking these huge life questions in the gym. But there was a disruption that took place in my spirit, and that's when I stumbled on Holy Yoga. And I just love that there could be more, that there's more of an evolution that could take place, that Holy Yoga might not be my jam for the rest of my life. Like, I'm very intrigued by what Gabriel's speaking. Like, oh man, maybe I need to go look him up and see what he's doing. Like, I just love that it you'll always be a student, even if you're an instructor, you'll always be a student. You are a student of this life. So yeah, it's been life-giving.
Gabriel has the best analogies, by the way. I kind of like to take notes whenever he speaks. I seriously love his analogies. Fiona, what about you? Before we close up, do you want to tell us a little bit about your trajectory?
So my practice is very asana based. Over the years, it's definitely softened, and I've had less of this competitive edge and need to be gymnastic because I just suffered too many injuries. That I moved more into the meditative aspects of it and really love Kundalini. I love being of service to, more psych and trauma sensitive populations, people that do chair yoga or just overall nidra. And there's just so many deeper ways to get into the body, like that maybe aren't as physical, but like they can be mental. And I recognize by strengthening my mind, I'm able to strengthen just all aspects of my life. And I'm happy also just sitting and meditating, if it's 5 minutes or 60 minutes a day. Like sometimes I don't even get to that, but just having that routine of just being able to, that's my yoga for the day, and being okay that it's not movement based sometimes. And again, it's fluctuated so much over the last 10 years. Like I'm still learning, I'm still in trainings, I'm still exploring vinyasa, kundalini, prenatal, postnatal, yin, all these different formats that just, they come from essentially the same idea, that to just allow yourself to expose and explore different formats, and not be afraid to be judged or by wanting to pursue or many or stick to one. So just continuing to be a student of life, like everyone has mentioned.
Thank you, Fiona. Before we close up and do our raffle, I just want to thank everyone here. You can find us at Salt and Light Coalition on Instagram or at www.saltandlightcoalition.com. Our classes are fully volunteer run, guys. So if you have a talent that you want to share with us, please go on our website and click on volunteer now. We would love to hear from you. You can also donate from there if you'd like, or even sign up to go see our gala on August 15th. I'm sure everybody's really tired of their quarantine. We're having a gala soon, so we can get dressed up and have fun. Thank you everyone for being here. Thank you for all the speakers who gave us their time. Thank you, Tuana, for being here and sharing your experience. Have a great night, guys.